Scene one, Apple, take one.
Hey everyone, Shane here with another episode of Film Notes. Thank you for joining in again. Today we have my good friend Jeffrey Kaiser Auricchio here. I'm very excited to have him talk all things photography. He's a commercial portrait photographer with his own studio. He's also an on-set medic, which is why he has the EMS kit there at his side, but we're going to get into that later. So Jeffrey, if you could introduce yourself and tell all the folks at home a little bit more about where you are, what you do, and all of that.
Hey everyone, I am Jeff Kaiser Auricchio. Professionally, I go by Jeffrey Kaiser because nobody can spell my last name, nobody can find it. So going by my middle name, Kaiser, is just so much easier to do. I am based in Redondo Beach, California, which is one of the small beach cities just south of Los Angeles. So I'm kind of not too far from the hub of all things production on the West Coast.
Now, we've known each other a long time, and I have watched you grow in your skill sets and your focus, but pretty much for like, I don't know, 10 or 20 years now, you've been a camera guy. So talk to me a little bit about how you got into that, and then maybe the story of how it progressed over time.
Many years ago, you know this because you were there, we would go out and we would enjoy all things related to the outdoors. We would go climbing, we would go hiking, we would hike in the day, we would climb in the dark, not always by choice, but we did it. And if you remember, I used to have this little point and shoot camera that I'd bring with me everywhere, and I'd take my old school panoramics. This is before the days of smartphones and smart technology, where you had your point and shoot camera and you'd click, 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 and take your panoramics. So about 13 years ago, I went to Best Buy and I was only looking for one thing. I wanted a computer program that would let me put all those panoramics together so I had one photo. And I came across Photoshop Elements. Reading the box, it said, oh, stitch panoramics. Yay, that's exactly what I want to do. So I brought it home, and it took all of about 10 minutes to figure out how to stitch together these panoramics. And then I really started to play with Photoshop. And I realized that I had not only a strong aptitude for the software, I picked it up very quickly, but I had a lot of fun screwing with my buddies. I would go on social media, and back then it was MySpace. Facebook was just now becoming a thing. I would go on social media, I'd take my friends' pictures, I'd do screenshots, I would Photoshop them, and I'd put them back up. And I had a lot of fun doing that. And I got pretty decent for an amateur Photoshop guy. And then one day I thought, wouldn't it be great if I had a really good high resolution digital SLR camera so I could have some really good quality photos so I could screw with my buddies on Photoshop. That would be awesome. And so I went back to Best Buy, of course, and I got my first entry-level quasi-professional camera, which is the Canon 7D, and I loved it. I took it out of the box. I went out back to my driveway. At the time, I was living in Yuma, Arizona, which is really known for sunsets. The first picture I ever took with this camera was my favorite sunset shot ever. And so from that moment on, I was hooked on the camera. I still enjoyed Photoshop, but over time, it became more about the photo and less about the Photoshop. And so I went to college and I got some higher education in photography, and I continued to do everything I could do to learn not only the art of photography, but the technical skill of photography. And that's what kind of brought me to where I am today with my photography. I call myself a commercial portrait photographer. The reason I say that is because my style of photography allows me not only to capture a great photo in the camera, but also take that photo into Photoshop and really retouch it and really work with the photo and make it better than the camera could. So I call myself really a retoucher who became a photographer, who became a retoucher. And that's where I am today.
One of the things I really like to dive into on this show is, and it's called film notes. So some of it is, the notes we pick up as we're doing our film stuff or production stuff. But the other thing is that story of the journey. And you talked about two main aspects, which people in the creative field need to learn. And it doesn't matter if it's making audio stuff like music, or written stuff like writing a book or a screenplay, or visual stuff like photos or video. There is the creative part and there's the technical part. So talk to me a little bit more about how you developed both of those things over time.
I started out in stills, and I do have some background in film. And that basically started when one night I got a phone call from you, and you said, hey, I'm shooting this documentary. It's called Upstate Boys. We are filming it in our hometown, Glens Falls, New York. And I need somebody who has cameras who can film interviews. And I think my comment to you was, well, hang on, I think my camera has a video mode. Let me check. and that was my introduction to film. I really loved going from stills to film because it's the next level. In fact, I call it four-dimensional photography. Typical photography, you're working with a two-dimensional image, but you light it in a way to give it depth and dimension. You give it 3 dimensions. Now, film takes those 3 dimensions and it adds a 4th one, movement, which is something that still photographers don't do. In fact, we try very hard not to move anything because it kind of screws things up. But in film, everything is moving and it has to move. And so as far as progressing with technical skill, getting involved with film really helped me out with the photography aspect, because not only would I learn to set my lighting up for a still subject, but I learned how to light for a subject that's going to start here. And in one continuous shot, it's going to be here. And then they're going to be over here. And that lighting has to look great from all angles. So getting involved in film really taught me to look at light in 4 dimensions. If you look at my style of photography 10 years ago and my style of photography today, there's a lot more depth and dimension to it. And I got that technical skill from working in film and planning camera movements.
Well, I'm glad that you talked about the difference between what your photography looked like then and now, because as you alluded towards, both the art and the science or the skill can develop, and we can develop the skill set through like learning. You mentioned going to college, and part of that is just experience. You get a new camera, you get a new lens, you learn how to use it, you figure out the settings, all that kind of stuff. Like you said, does it even have a video setting? Like, I gotta learn that. But it's also the development of the art and the development of the style. So talk to me a little more about what your evolution has been in your style and how you're able to see the growth of yourself, what I would call an artist, from where you used to be like 10 years ago to where you are now.
Growth always begins with taking the first step. And I'm going to tell this story. The people are going to know who they are, so I hope they don't get mad at me for telling this story, but I'm going to tell it. I finished 4 years of college to learn photography and really hone in the art of photography. And I still didn't think I was ready to be a professional photographer. I needed to learn more. I needed better equipment. I needed all kinds of things. And so one day, a friend of mine, he and his wife have a business where she's the photographer. He does some sound stuff. He said, hey, my wife is doing a photo shoot for a poster that we need to create. Why don't you come along and you can see how she does it? And I thought, oh my God, that's amazing. I'm going to learn from a pro photographer. This is going to be awesome. And so I was excited for a week. And I get to the shoot and it was incredible. There were very few lights. Nobody really knew what to do with the lights. In fact, the photographer had the camera set to the small JPEG setting because the guy at Walgreens told her it won't crop the photos if you do that. I mean, it was crazy. And so at that point, I learned that, okay, if this is the level that is required to be a professional photographer, I'm ready. And that was when I started my business in Yuma, Arizona. You know this as an artist, but we'll say it again for the people watching, people at home. It doesn't matter how good you get, you are always going to be a student, period. If you ever get to the point where you think you cannot learn anything else about your craft, it's time to find something else to do, or maybe go out and get some inspiration from somewhere. But we will always be students of our art forms, as well as teachers, as well as practitioners. As far as progressing through the years, it all starts with that first step, that one like boot in the ass that gives you the confidence to just go and do it. And that's, once you get over that, just don't stop creating. My wife told me, if you are not completely embarrassed by your first launch of your business, then you started too late. So a lot of people will worry about failure when they start their business or start out on their careers. I say, embrace that failure, let it motivate you to progress beyond it, and then just go out and create. And so that's kind of the mentality that I've had with just about all of my projects that I've done. Just about every major project that I've worked on, there is something where at the start, I had no idea how I was going to do it. And it's really kind of, it makes you a little apprehensive when you think, I'm going to have to do this. I don't know how to do it. I'll give you an example that will sound like it is completely made up, but it is absolutely true. I once got invited to a project, and a friend of mine said, hey, I want you to film my wedding. But it's not just going to be a wedding, it's going to be a climbing trip. And it's not just going to be personal filming, we're going to turn it into a short movie. So it's a wedding, it's a climbing trip, and it's a movie. So I want you to get together all the things that you need to capture that, and then carry them up 1,000 feet up the side of El Cap and do everything there. And I said, I have no idea how I'm even going to do that. Let's do it. So projects like that really stretch your comfort zone and force you to go beyond that, that is how you progress in whatever art form you're working in. And so you can see from pictures 10 years ago, pictures 5 years ago, and then pictures today, you can see the change in my style of photography and how much more depth and dimension it has now. And that comes from always forcing myself out of my comfort zone, always forcing myself to try new things, not be afraid of failure, because failure just tells you that's not the way you do it. Failure directs you in the right direction. It teaches you there's another way to do it, you'll find that. And so that's where I'm at today.
Luckily, I'm editing this, so you're not seeing me chuckling to myself as Jeff's talking about that climbing film, because that was my climbing film. Now, we've talked about a couple of transitions that you've been doing, including being married and moving and changing studio space and all that. But you also have changed this other aspect, which is taking some of your rescue and medical background and using that. So let's talk about that a little bit and what you're using that for these days.
So in my prior life, I worked in public safety for over 20 years. In fact, I'm now 45 years old and retired, so I have a pension coming in, which is great. But as a big part of public safety, I've been an EMT for years and years. And so when I moved out here to California and I'm in the hub of all things production related, I realized I'm not going to have clients every day. there's going to be a few day stretches, maybe even a week at a time when I don't have any photo clients. I'm not ready to just sit around and kick back on the porch for a week. What am I going to do to fill that time? I have my EMT certification in California. I have a first aid kit. I thought I'll see if I can go pick up film projects. Most film projects need a medic. And that's exactly what I did. And now I'm on board with 4 or 5 different companies that all contract out EMTs as independent contractors. And so I've done a lot of events, a lot of film projects, just as a set medic. And that's really a lot of fun. And it fills my schedule gaps and lets me get out and see various aspects of the film industry, not just from one perspective, but by looking at a lot of different styles, how different directors work, how the ADs manage the crew. I've learned quite a bit just from being the guy that's on the sidelines watching to see if anybody gets hurt.
And you weren't necessarily throwing that out as a note, but I'm going to lean into it because of the name of the show. That's a great note. Being on set is a great way to learn. And I encourage people who are interested in pursuing any kind of artistic stuff to, like, they always need an extra set of hands. And even if you're just a PA or something, that's a great way to be, like you said, the person standing on the side. Now, sometimes you are there for a reason. You have to be ready to do whatever the thing is and run around and do stuff. But still, watching how people do stuff, learning the craft, so to speak, is a really great thing. And as I'm sure you're experiencing as well, it's a great way to meet people and connect for, various other things. Talk to me a little bit about like the evolution of your interests or your specialty. I think we all kind of start off with a general idea, like I want to do photography or I want to do film stuff. And then over time, it kind of zigs and zags in different directions.
To say somebody is a photographer is like saying they're a doctor. Well, a doctor of what? Exactly. Very few photographers who are stable in their industry are the jack of all trades. You'll very rarely find somebody that goes out and does landscapes, and then they do portraits, and then they do product, and then they do pets. And then kind of the example that disproves the rule, I guess, if you were a photographer like Joel Grimes, who's been in the industry for 40 something years and has done each of those things for 10 years, sure, you can do whatever you want to do because you're at that level. A lot of us just starting out, we may experiment with different things. I've experimented with landscape, with beauty, with portraiture, but we always fall into that small category of what we really enjoy. Now, for me, that's commercial portraiture because I love to work with the camera. I love to work with lights. I love being in a studio, and I love working with Photoshop. I don't enjoy fine art photography. I don't enjoy volume photography, like going to a school and taking 300 portraits of kids and not being able to retouch any of them. I don't enjoy that style. So that's kind of where I'm at today because of my initial interest in Photoshop, my absolute infatuation with light, and the camera style that I have, the photography style that allows me to bring those dimensions together. I stick to the commercial applications of portraiture, like headshots, branding, commercial advertising, things of that nature. If I had any advice for people just getting into photography, it's experiment with whatever you want to shoot. When you're first starting out, go and shoot anything you want. Hone in on your strengths and ignore your weaknesses. I know it sounds crazy to hear somebody say ignore your weaknesses, but what I mean is if you are great at shooting portraits and you shoot a car and you suck at it, unless you really, really, really want to be an automotive photographer, don't take pictures of cars anymore. Do portraits because you're good at it. That being said, if you do want to take pictures of cars, well, then you got a lot to learn. That was exactly my start. I tried to take a picture of a car and it sucked. And I was like, wow, that sucks. I'm way better at people. And so that's what I do.
One of the things that you mentioned is a studio, and I know you're in a studio. So talk to me a little bit about your space, what you offer, what you have, and how people can maybe work with you there.
It's actually a very small boutique style portrait studio. It's really perfect for the style and the type of photography that I do. So when you first come in, it's just kind of a long rectangular building, and the walls are painted white for a reason, so that we can control light better. We've got some furniture items. We've got plenty of space for lights. We've got different colored backdrops hanging on the wall. So really, it has everything that we need. Now, obviously, if we're doing a commercial shoot and we need to have a whole crew, this isn't the place to do it. It's just too small. It is a wonderful studio for what I need. Headshots, branding, things like that. If somebody contacts me and says, I absolutely need headshots within the next 2 days, can you do it? Most likely there's going to be some studio time free to be able to get in and get it done.
Now, you said a couple notes for photography. What would be some notes for someone like you mentioned who's looking to hire a photographer? What would be good for them to know so they could differentiate between the right person and the wrong person?
Especially when you're working with a new photographer, it's always a gamble because you don't know who that person is. You don't know if they're able to reproduce their work over and over again. You may look at a photographer's portfolio and see 10 images that all look amazing, but maybe that photographer has taken thousands of images. Those are just the best ones, and the chances that I'm reproducing that quality of work are very slim. So one of the things that you can do if you're looking for a photographer is go to some websites. Like Canon has what's called Image Connect, where they vet photographers. They look through photographers' portfolios. They do corporate background check on the photographers. And so you have to be vetted to be listed as a photographer on their website. And you can look through, you can see different photographers. You can search by what they do in photography. So if you're looking for a beauty photographer, you can look through the portfolios of just the photographers that do that. Another resource that's available is Professional Photographers of America. PPA.com is their website. And they also have a Find a Photographer link. So you can go on their website and same thing, you can search around your area. You can search by photographer specialties. What you can find on PPA's website that you can't find anywhere else is a link to certified professional photographers. This is the next step. In order to be a certified professional photographer, you have to pass a written exam that is not easy, and it doesn't just cover one aspect, it covers all aspects of photography. In addition to the written exam, you've got to pass a technical skills evaluation. They give you a scene, and you have to build this scene, and you have to photograph it to the exact specifications, to the point where if your shadow range is off by just a little bit, it doesn't pass. If your highlight range is off by just a little bit, it doesn't pass. So to search for certified professional photographers, that really tells you that you have a photographer that's not just somebody who has a camera and a business card. They have education, they've proven their education, they have the equipment necessary, they've proven their technical expertise, and they can reproduce that work over and over again. So that's really my best advice to people looking for photographers.
And I do believe you are a certified photographer yourself. Is that right?
Yes.
So I encourage people to not only look for you on that site, but also look for you and some of your work on your site. So where would you want to direct people so that they could contact you, maybe see more what you've done, or maybe follow along with what you're doing now?
The best way to get in touch with me is through my website, www.jeffrey-kaiser.com. And through my website, you can go right there on my homepage and you can see an example, plenty of examples of my work. through my portfolio, you can see other portraits that I've taken, some commercial work. I've done a few film posters through my love of Photoshop. You can see some of those. Through my website, you can reach out to me. My phone number is there. My email address is there. You can go to the contact page and you can send me an email directly through there. Or if you want to just talk to me and see what my style is like, what I can do for you, or if you're a photographer and you just want to ask, hey, I saw this photo, how did you light that? How did you get that? How did you get the image so sharp? Right there on my website, you can schedule a no-cost consultation, either by phone or by Zoom. So you can just click on those links, it'll put it right on my calendar, and we'll get in touch.
We've talked a lot about where you've been, where you came from, how things have changed and all of that, but what's coming up? What's next? Where are you going to be going in your next steps?
My business is just now getting off the ground in California, and I just started advertising. So what's next for me is really pushing forward and getting myself known throughout this community. And I say community, I'm talking about greater Los Angeles and Orange County. It's about a 20 million person community. That's my next couple steps, is just getting out there and getting known. Through EMS work, I'm actually starting my quest to be a paramedic here very soon. In July, I'm starting the paramedic prep course. And so hopefully by March of next year, I'll be able to do a lot more advanced skills than what a basic EMT can do.
Earlier, you gave some notes to photographers, and then you gave some notes for people looking for photographers. But as we talked about, you have this other lens to see things through, which is that kind of medic EMT hat. What might be some notes from that perspective that might be helpful for people?
My best advice for people in the production industry from the standpoint of a medic is have a safety meeting at the beginning of every day's shoot. Whether it's a one-day shoot where you're doing interviews, or it's a full-day project with stunts and pyrotechnics and flames and whatever else. Every single day, have a safety meeting. Here's what the safety meeting actually does. It's an opportunity for the crew to get to know the medic, to build confidence in the medic. But what the safety meeting really is for is to put the entire crew on notice to the hazards that exist on a film set. By skipping the safety meeting, especially if you are the director or you are the producer or the executive producer, whoever you are that's in charge of overseeing this project, if you skip a safety meeting, you're putting yourself in a serious position of disadvantage if there's ever a lawsuit filed, because anybody that goes to testify at deposition is going to testify that there was no safety meeting. Nobody ever pointed out the hazards. And sure, there's a lot of them that people should know, but in the film industry, you can't assume that people should know anything. You have got to tell them. And that's what that safety meeting does. It offers you that protection. If, God forbid, there's a lawsuit filed against your film, you could say this hazard existed. The entire crew was notified of it. We have a medic on standby that gave additional advice on how to avoid these things. We have done our part to keep people safe.
With that big medic kit behind you, I'm just curious, can you talk a little bit about what's in there or how you use it when you're on set?
The thing about a set medic is you don't really know what's coming up the next day. When I get a call to go to a particular project, oftentimes I don't even know what the project is until I get there, because the medic's job is always the same. The medic doesn't need the particular details of the project necessarily in advance. So that being said, as a set medic, you really have to be ready for anything. The day could be 8 hours of interviews, or it could be running and gunning with stunts and really dangerous stuff. I carry enough equipment to really be ready for whatever happens. As an example, my full med kit, this is one bag. I have two others that I have on me, weighs about 70 pounds. And I don't just do film sets, I do sporting events and event first aid also. So all of that equipment is able to be carried on me, and I'm able to move around with it fairly comfortably. But to give you some examples, I carry a full-size oxygen tank. I carry an automated external defibrillator. I have my own because venues that I go to might not have one, or I don't want to rely on, I need it and theirs doesn't work. I want to have my own so I know that it works every time. I have a full set of trauma supplies. I have a full set of diagnostic supplies. I have 2 bags that I carry on me that are specifically developed for treating penetrating trauma like gunshots, stabbings. In the film industry, we all know that accidents happen and it's very unfortunate. But also in Los Angeles, there's shootings every day. And I would hate to have something tragic happen at a film set where there was a shooting nearby and somebody was accidentally hit, and I don't have the equipment to take care of that. So really, I carry, honestly, just about everything that you would find in an ambulance. I carry it on me somehow.
I think it's a really great note for people. Sometimes it's not what's so dangerous on the production or on the set, but it's what's so dangerous where you're shooting. As you mentioned, we shot on a cliff face off the ground in Yosemite in the wilderness. Like, there's a lot of dangerous stuff there, even though what we were doing wasn't very dangerous. We were just kind of standing there and exchanging bows, but we were doing it like several hundred feet off the ground. Or to your point, being in LA where, sometimes there's street violence. And that's something I don't think other people would have thought of. So I'm really glad that you brought that up. And also that you talked a little bit about what you have with you, because I didn't know some of that stuff. I just made assumptions because I've had a little medical training and I know what a first aid kit looks like if it's a good one. But some of those things hopefully we'll never need, but it's great to know that somebody on the set probably has that stuff with them. So great to know.
Thanks.
Well, of course, I'm a fan of all the things you do separately, much less together. Again, I think it's an amazing overlap that you have that very few other people do. I encourage everyone to go seek Jeffrey out and especially look at his work. You're the fastest lighting person I've ever seen. You have this amazing gift to just go, wait, don't move. Click, look at that, and it looks amazing. I don't know how you do it. Before we run out of time, I just want to thank you for being on Film Notes, and I hope that this move into California and this new direction of photography really works out. And I look forward to us working together on more projects soon.
There will be more projects soon, I guarantee it.
Thanks for watching. If you'd like to support the show, please click on the link below. You can also contact me at my website if you have any questions about filmmaking or anything else. Off to the side, you'll see a couple of my books, Film Notes and the Film Notes Workbook. I encourage you to check those out if you'd like to learn more about filmmaking. See you in the next episode.
Scene 1, Apple, take 1.